Here's how to make K-pop beats for NewJeans on FL Studio. We're going to create a track in the style of NewJeans' song, NewJeans, which is a UK garage style of beat with K-pop elements. Let's jump straight in. As always, we're going to start with the chord progression. The music theory behind these chords is pretty interesting. We're in the key of E minor, which we can see by going up here, going to View, selecting Scale Highlighting, and then changing the root note to E and the scale to the minor mode. All of these lighter notes are in the scale, and all of these darker notes aren't in the scale. So we're going to start by laying down an E minor chord, which consists of the root note E, and then skipping a note in the scale and adding a note, which is the third, skipping another note, and then adding the fifth. Now for the next chord, you'll notice that some of these notes aren't in the scale. Specifically this D sharp or E flat. This right here is a B dominant 7th chord. This right here would be a B major 7th chord. And this would be a B minor 7th chord. We're basically using the major 3rd and the minor 7th. The reason we can use this chord in this scale is because we're using a technique called modal interchange. To put it simply, we're in the E minor scale, but we can borrow notes from the E major scale. So let's click this button up here, go to View, go down to Scale Highlighting, and keep E as the root note, and change the scale to major. Now you can see that this chord fits in the E major scale, so we can use it for this track. Let's go back up to our view, change the scale highlighting back to E minor. This technique of modal interchange is used a lot in K-pop. We're then going to add a C major chord and an A major chord where we invert the A, so pitch it up an octave. For the preset, we want to take some form of key. You can use any key preset you want to use. However, this is the sound that I'm using, and it's from my plugin Grain X4. I love the sound of this preset because it sounds soft and it's exactly what we need to use for K-pop. Now we're going to copy these chords across and use a different sound. I've taken this key again from my plugin Grain X4. It has this kind of digital electric piano sound to it, which again is perfect for this type of beat. Finally, we're going to copy these chords again, pitch them up an octave, and add another preset. This is the Simplicity key from Grain X4 again. For this preset, we want something that's a bit brighter, so it has a bit more high end to it. And finally, I found this cool sound in Analog Lab, which can sit behind these chords. Here's how the chords sound all together when you add all of the layers. Now it's time to copy the root notes of the chords and add a bass line. I'm using the Again Again sub bass from Grain X4, which is one of my favorite bass sounds. I've also turned up the glide time, which affects how long it takes from notes to slide to another note when you overlap them. By the way, this plugin is currently 50% off and linked in the description of this video if you want to check it out. Now it's time to add a counter melody. You can use any sound for this. I'm using a really simple preset I created inside of Serum. And we can add any notes inside of the scale. Remember that we can also borrow notes from the E major scale. Here's how all of these components sound together. Now there's a few other melodic elements we're going to add to this track, but I'm going to come back to them later. We're going to now focus on the drums from the hook section. I have 5 main drum sounds in this beat: a kick, a snare, an open hat, a clap, and a closed hat. Here's what the kick pattern looks like inside of the piano roll. And there's something slightly different about this pattern. If you haven't noticed it already, it's that some of these notes are placed off of the grid. This note here, for example, looks like it should be placed here. We're adding what's called swing, which is a big factor of UK garage music. By slightly offsetting notes, it makes them sound delayed, which creates a cool rhythm. Here's what the kick sounds like on its own. You won't notice the swing too much until we start adding the other elements of the drums. Now we can add a really simple snare pattern, which sits on the 2nd and 4th beats, but we can also add accent notes, just to create a little bit of bounce. Then we play an offbeat open hat, a clap that's layered behind the snare, and finally a closed hat. You'll also notice that the closed hat does the same as the kick, where it plays slightly offbeat. That's literally it for the drums. Pretty simple, right? Now let's go to this section of the track, which plays just before the 2nd hook. It's really simple. We're just going to copy the chords, but we're going to arpeggiate them, which literally means to play one note after the other. I've taken this preset from Omnisphere for this, but again, you can use any sound you want to use. And whilst that pattern plays, we're going to have an 808 that sits in the background. Again, this 808 plays the root notes of the chords, but it's going to play in this Jersey club rhythm. By the way, these notes here are literally just slide notes. You can't even see it when I zoom in, but if you double click here, you can see that they're slide notes. Here's how this section sounds together. We also have some small automations and transition effects. These transitions literally just add impact to the drop in the hook. And this EQ is simply loaded on the master channel by clicking on an empty slot and adding a fruity parametric EQ too. Then if we open this up, we can go up here and go to presets and select the 20 Hz to 18 kHz cut preset. We can then right click on the frequency of the high pass filter. Go to create automation clip, which will create this in the playlist. We can then right click to add points and slowly increase the frequency of this high pass filter just before the drop. This takes away all of the bass out the track and brings it straight back in as soon as the track drops, which is commonly used in EDM music like garage, house, drum and bass, etc. For the mixing of the track, there's really not too much going on. I do have some sidechain, but this isn't fully necessary. Basically, this just ducks the volume of the bass line when the kick hits, because the kick and the bass line sometimes clash. But to be honest, sidechain isn't that necessary for garage music. It's a technique that's more commonly used in house music or techno music. For the mastering of the track, we do have an Ozone 11. This is just an AI mastering plugin, which I find great to make our music as loud as possible. But again, it's not completely necessary, and you don't have to purchase this plugin if you don't want to use it. For the structuring of the track, it's great to have different layers so that you can add and remove certain elements of the chords before and after the hook. You don't massively notice it, but subconsciously you can definitely hear the difference in energy from the hook to the intro and the verses. Anyway, this is how to make a New Jeans type beat on FL Studio. I hope you guys all learned something from this video, and I'm going to play you the final result now. If you want access to over 400 presets just like the sounds used in this video, then make sure to check out Grain X4 using the link in the description, where it's currently 50% off to only $49.